Okay, everybody, I think we're going to get started. If everybody could take their seats, it'd be wonderful. Well, good morning and welcome. My name is Matthew Jewett. I'm Pete's stepson. It's wonderful to see all of you who could be here today, and wonderful that everybody that couldn't be here is zooming in as we speak on YouTube. Let's see. This is hard. Sorry. Okay. Pete came into my life when I was 14, and he was a father figure, a mentor, an advisor, and a huge supporter in my life. I would not have accomplished what I've accomplished in my life without Pete inspiring me along the way. And look around. It is obvious by this showing here today that he did the same for all of you and countless others, right? They're standing room only right now. I mean, this is telling. This is absolutely telling right now. We're planning on, maybe 60 people, okay? And we filled this place well over occupancy, okay? That is amazing. So thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. Our family appreciates it. And I know Pete is looking down right now and just absolutely inspired for you all, the fact that you're here supporting him and celebrating his life, right? Celebrating the things and the ways he touched your life and inspired all of us. And that's why we're here today. We're here to share the stories and the love and the impact he had on our lives and everybody he shared with. So, okay, trying to keep it together. All right. So our family put together a short, basically picture, written description of his life. And I'm going to share that now before we get into the rest of the ceremony. Okay, so I'm going to read that right now for you all. Okay, so thank you again for celebrating the life of Robert Wayne Pete Henshaw, who was born in Herrin, Illinois. Growing up in Indianapolis, Pete attended Moorhead Middle School and graduated from Howe High School, where he ran track, hurdles, and it was a punter and offensive end for the varsity football team. At Indiana State, he was the president of his fraternity and wrestled on the Division I varsity team. It was here he met his roommate and lifelong friend, Joe Flores. Essentially, Pete was a stud when it came to athletics, right? He truly was. He truly was. During the summers, Pete worked for his father at the Blue and White truck stop and on the east side of Indianapolis. After graduating, he taught physical education at Calumet High School in Gary, Indiana, where he was the varsity wrestling coach. Pete married Connie Carol Oliver in 1966. Always ready for new challenges, Pete left teaching for sales. With his quick wit and charming personality, which you all know very well, he excelled in selling everything from pharmaceuticals to children's clothing to lingerie. During the urban cowboy days, he sold Western wear, traveling most of California. Betsy was born while he was teaching in Gary, Indiana. Peter was born while working in pharmaceutical sales in Terre Haute, Indiana. In Ohio, Pete sold children's clothes for Carter Clothing Company, often using Betsy and Peter as his models. Pete made a big move to Incline Village, Nevada in 1978, where he opened the Timberline Silver and Clay store and continued to raise his family. After divorcing, Pete moved to RV sales and eventually settling in Southern California, becoming finance manager at an RV dealership. It was here that Pete met the love of his life, Christina, and her 3 boys, Greg, who was 19, myself, I was 14, and Josh, who was 8 years old. He was an avid supporter of us boys in our high school wrestling and water polo teams. When I went to the Maritime Academy and Josh went to the Air Force Academy, Pete became the unofficial videographer, following the teams all around the country. Pete and Chris retired in 2005 and moved to Sun City, Lincoln Hills to begin the new chapter of their lives. Joining the Sun City Travel Club, they visited many places in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and their favorite, China. Looking for new challenges, Pete began coaching track at Lincoln High School and taking classes in photography at Sierra College. This inflamed his passion and that he pursued for the rest of his life. As you can see around this facility, we've placed pictures of all the work he did over the last, 20 years of doing photography. By the way, on the tables, you'll see pictures, and on the chairs, these are pictures from Pete's collection. You're welcome to take those with you when you leave. Pete, becoming a member of Sun City Photography Club, he enjoyed planning field trips and sharing in his skills. He loved shooting the wonder of the night sky, and many of these spectacular photos are here for you to see. Pete's second passion was dancing with his wife, Chris. They spent many hours taking classes both here in Sun City, Lincoln, and in Sacramento. They often could be seen practicing new moves in the gym and the aerobics gym in Sun City. Mastering the difficult and sultry Argentino tango was a source of pride for Pete. In his last year of life, Pete found his new love in his Labradoodle, Sophie, spending many hours training, walking, and lots of trips to the dog park. Pete was preceded in his death by his sister Carol, Ann Henshaw Haggis, and his survived brother, Christopher Ray Henshaw, the back table there, and his sister Mary Jo Pritchard, and his son Peter Henshaw, his daughter Betsy Henshaw Davis, as well as his 4 grandchildren and 5 step grandchildren. He's left a legacy. He's touched us all, and I couldn't imagine my life without him. So I'm going to transition and invite Pete's daughter, Betsy Henshaw, to come up and share the eulogy that she put together.
All right. Dad was one of those men that rarely met a stranger. He could talk to anybody about anything. Even though he was truly shy in nature, he was also outgoing. A bit of a contradiction. I'm grateful every day that I was able to spend with him. I think my favorite thing about my dad was that if I had a problem or an upcoming choice, or I just talked to him about something that was bothering me to get it off my chest, he would start searching for stuff or ideas or helpful things on the internet and start sending me texts with links to stuff. But it gave me the feeling that he was thinking about me, even though we weren't talking right then. So I knew I was always on his mind and in his heart. Okay. When I was little, Dad used to make sure that when I was napping or sleeping that my ears were tucked back. That was a horrible fear for him, that I would have the Henshaw ears. And as you see, it worked. I could wear my hair back. I look now, and even in the pictures, I don't even notice it. So maybe he practiced on his ears while he slept, too. I talked to my daughter, Cassidy, about it, and said, I don't think we got that trait. And she said, She got that trait. So she wears her hair down. She's a Henshaw. Another wonderful memory is when Dad would send us to bed. He would come and tell Peter and I bedtime stories. And they were always about Peter Pan and Betsy and Peter going on adventures. He would talk about Peter Pan coming up to the window, flying and taking us out on wonderful adventures. And I remember that very clearly. I think about the dad I knew and how inside he was really shy and fairly insecure, yet his whole life he stood out in a crowd. He was voted to lead things. He became the top at whatever he did. I guess like many of us, maybe trying to prove that he's worthy when he was worthy the whole time, especially to me. He went from getting kicked out of college. I don't know if everybody knows that, but that happened. Like his first year, to becoming the head of the fraternity before graduation. He has loved me for who I was since I was born. I've always felt definitely daddy's girl. He would, his trick was to hold me up in his hand or on his chest, and I would stand there and say, ta-da! And I was little, and there would be a picture that you'll see, and I was like, God, I was little. I would have a heart attack doing that with one of my kids. But he just had me up doing stuff all the time and pinning my ears back. You can't find that kind of love in the general population, and sometimes not even in family, but he always had my back. He made me crazy, too. He always had to drive. He had to be the driver. But while he was driving, he was trying to work and answer calls and mess with the thing to show us where we were going. And I just sat in the passenger seat in just anxiety, knowing that any moment he's going to crash us. But he couldn't. He could multitask. I cannot. I would kill us if we tried that in the car today, for sure. But I did get to take a trip with him just a year and a half ago. Across country, just me and him. It was awesome. He drove most of the way. I was anxious most of the way because he was older and I know I was a better driver now. But he did let me drive a little bit. But it was probably one of the best times we've had in a really long time. It really was. It was wonderful to be able to spend that that kind of time. And of course we would pull over, spend lots of time taking pictures, and I was always finding all the cool rocks around. So I was like filling in the back of the car with rocks. I mean, hey, I could take them home. It's not like a flight or anything. And he just looked at me like I was insane, and I was like, I like rocks, Dad. That's my thing. You know, got all these rocks from everywhere I've been, find rocks with holes and, hang them up somewhere. That's my thing. So I'm definitely the rock hound that, like, he's the photographer. He said, you don't need any more rocks. And I was like, yes, I need more rocks. And yes, we're putting them in the car with us. I guess, okay. When we would go, my youngest daughter, Harley, also takes after my dad in some ways. Along with the other two. They definitely have dad's traits. Well, and Hannah, too. She was known as the kindergarten police because she would make sure that all the other kids followed the rules because these were the rules and that was what needed to happen. We need, let's follow those rules. So, apparently, my dad was the Rocklin dog park police. Which, he got that this last year, and that he's had Sophie. If someone's dog was acting out and they weren't doing anything about it, he made sure that they knew. Sometimes they didn't come back, at least not while he was there. It makes me laugh every time I think about my dad being the Rocklin Dog Park police. So I had phone calls with Dad, and we talked in person. before his surgery and while he was in the hospital. And he told me, without a doubt, he had a wonderful life. He said far more than he deserved, and that he was ready to go if it was his time. But he said, not that I want to go. But he repeated to me, he had had a fantastic life. More than he could ask for. And many people in the world don't get to have that feeling when they pass. So I'm truly grateful that he's had such a wonderful life. I'm sad for me because he's not here, but he definitely did it up. There was no downtime for Pete. Although it's killing us, he was okay with leaving. And I know his only anguish right now is seeing the pain we're in. Now he's at peace with so many of the people that he loved that have passed. And they're just up there trying to console us. Thank you guys for coming.
All right, next I'd like to invite Joshua Jewett, Pete's other son. As I like to call him, my little big brother.
Thank you, Betsy. I don't really know how I'm supposed to follow that. That was wonderful. I'm not sure Betsy did justice to the image of Pete driving in the car. I need to reiterate the situation, the command center situation that he had. If you could picture someone with a pad of paper writing on the center console, their computer out, their mobile phone out, driving with their knees, and maybe holding a soda in the other hand. That's the image that you got to conjure out there. I had forgotten about that, and thank you, Betsy. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Josh Jewett. I'm Pete's youngest stepson. I was so honored that the family asked me to speak today. When you look around this room, you can really see the two things that Pete really cared about: photos and family. We're not in some ornate church because Pete wasn't super religious, and we favored the beauty of his own creative expression over extravagant floral arrangements. What you see around you is just a sampling of his photography from over the years. Pete tried to capture the beauty and wonder of the world around us for us to appreciate long after the moment had passed. The other thing you see is an overflowing of the friends and family that were so important to him. I think I've counted over 100 people in attendance here today, and even more watching online. This celebration has a larger attendance than most weddings that I've been to. Pete might be rolling over and groaning at all the fuss, but it's just a testament to the lives that he's touched. I think that's telling of the person that he was. All of you who've taken the time out of your day to come and celebrate Pete, each of you were touched in one way or another, and it's a reminder of how much he made his family and his friends the priorities in his life. When I researched what you're supposed to say in a eulogy, it was quite overwhelming. There's so many things that we could say about Pete. I mean, you listen to Matt, and just the sheer breadth of his life and what he's done is incredible. So I figured I would just focus on just some of the simple ways that Pete has really impacted me in my life. I don't know how many memories each of you have from before you were 8 years old, but I don't have many. That means that there aren't many family memories that he's not a part of for me. Stepfathers don't get a lot of credit in our society. Despite there being no playbook or script to follow, Pete navigated the role pretty damn well. And he managed to be the person in my life who really showed me how to be a good man. He taught me how to tie a tie, how to iron my shirt. He helped me negotiate my first car purchase. And there's the first talk about the appropriate use of the internet on our home computer. When my older brother Matt went away for college, it was Pete who stepped in to play basketball in the backyard with me. When I showed real interest in attending the Air Force Academy, he helped my mom organize a surprise birthday trip to go to a flight simulator. And when I eventually got into the academy, it was Pete who took me down to the track and whipped me into running shape so I'd have the best chance of being successful when I got there. And it was Pete, along with my mom, who taught me the most important lesson that I've learned. A few years ago, after my divorce, I was struggling with disappointment in myself for my failed marriage, anxiety about co-parenting with someone I wasn't sure I could trust, and fears surrounding exploring any new relationships. I hopped on a call with my mom and Pete, and they shared with me that they almost never argued. And they subsequently shared what they felt was the secret to their harmonious relationship. They said that when someone loves you or does something you perceive as mean or hurtful, that very often that thing they've said or done has two ways of being interpreted. The hurtful interpretation involves viewing what they've said through your own filters of past trauma, fear, insecurity, anger. And they said another way of responding, of perceiving what they've said or they've done, is to remove those filters and remember that they love you. Then you can finally hear what they actually mean to say and see what they actually meant to do. As I listened to this, I realized the truth in it. I don't have any memories from my childhood of them ever arguing. The only real conflict I recall from my childhood is when I wasn't living up to the standards of being a good person, or when I wasn't treating with my mom with respect. This advice that they shared that day gave me the confidence and the inspiration to pick myself up and keep moving. It's not always easy, but it's an ideal that I've tried to live by in all my relationships since. And it really has made life so much easier. I'm so grateful for this advice and for the fact that I get to carry Pete with me in my memories and this advice in my journey in life. I hope that by sharing this with you today, that you can too. Thank you.
Okay, now we're lucky to have several people who have volunteered to share about their experiences and how Pete impacted their lives. And so I'm going to invite several people up for some short shares. And I'm going to start with Jim Stalker, if you can come on up and share. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jim Stalker, and my dad, I can blame my dad for that one. Anyway, I'm really, really pleased to be here today, and thanks, Chris, for asking me to say a little bit about Pete. And when she said a bit, she wasn't kidding either. I've got 3 minutes, so if I elocute deliberately with emphasis, I have about 450 words to share my recollections of a man we're celebrating today, Pete Henshaw. So let's get right to the point. To know Pete was to love Pete. Wouldn't you agree? He indeed was a prince among men. Charming, erudite, kind, loyal, and handsome. He often insisted on repeatedly showing me his college wrestling photo. Has anybody seen that one? No hands? Okay. How about young Pete on a motorcycle? He loved those pictures, commenting, "Damn, I was incredibly handsome and ripped back then." And you know what? He was. But then, weren't we all kind of a little bit back then? I don't know. Pete and I made about 5 years ago, immediately connecting through our senses of humor and love of what had been called TV's renaissance. Across dozens of breakfasts at the back booth of Brookfield's, we passionately talked television. Pete would make a case for a lame show like Broadchurch, a British drama that goes on and on and on, being an excellent showcase for Olivia Colman. I said the show was as dreary as the rest of England, and I could not maintain consciousness through a single episode. Guess what? Coleman, who I didn't know at the time, went on to win an Emmy, 3 Golden Globes, and even an Oscar. Turned out Pete knew what he was talking about. And Pete was at ease with himself, and he knew who he was. He was honest, direct, and perfectly content listening. All of us who have spent time with him know he was a delight to be with. I'm so thankful, as I'm sure many of you are, and grateful for the time that you've been able to share with Pete. One day I came to breakfast, locked and loaded with a topic worthy of Jerry Seinfeld. What is the deal with the phrase, "my good friend"? Everybody says it, but I'm not sure they're really friends. Pete and I would have these types of debates, and I remember him going off on people who say "my truth." What is that, he would say. There's just the truth, not my truth, shaking his head. And after all these years of conversation, I asked Pete if it was okay if I called him "my good friend Pete." He said, "Of course, Jim, so long as I don't have to tell you the same thing back." Then he did that Pete laugh. You know that Pete laugh. We all heard it a million times. Brought us in, infectious, disarming. What a guy. I do have one other quick Pete story. Not once or twice, but at least half a dozen times, Pete would start flipping through that ever-present iPad to show me a picture of his wife, Chris. "Isn't she beautiful?" he'd say. "Isn't that a fantastic smile?" he'd say. Or, "Doesn't she look great in that outfit?" And always the follow-up was, "I am so grateful to have found her." Over the years, how many other folks have stopped a discussion with showing me a picture of their wife, pointing out how grateful they are to know them? Answer: zilch. None. Just Pete. Prince among men. To know him was to love him. I appreciate your friendship. I will never forget you, my good friend Pete.
Thank you, Jim. Next, I'd like to invite Joe Flores.
Well, I talked to Pete last night, and he told me, "Don't tell him everything." He said, "Do not dare tell him everything we did." I met Pete in 1961 as a freshman in college. Became friends. First 2 kids have motorcycles on college. We went to John F. Kennedy's funeral in D.C. with no money, but his credit card that did not work at a Shell station in Pittsburgh. And so we had to make ends meet. We went on a trip. Most kids were going to Miami Beach for the spring break. He said, "Let's go to Mexico." So we made it all the way to Mexico City, and we were sitting there in a little cafe with not that much money, and there was 3 good-looking girls at the next table, and they said, why don't you guys go to Acapulco? And Pete says, we don't have any money. She says, well, I could probably hook you guys up with a free room or 2. So Pete said, well, let's go, we're going. She said, only on one condition, that you take me. Her name was Eva. And I said, Pete, we can't take her. We're going to get a free room out of it. So we went to Acapulco, and I said, Eva belongs to you. I said, she's not with me. We took many trips, many things we did. I think the success of we never had an argument all through our lives for 61 years, never. I mean, I listened to him, he listened to me. We trusted each other, and we had each other's back. Nobody could say anything bad about Pete when I was around, or nobody could say anything bad about Joe when he was around. We had each other's back. We trusted each other, and we laughed a lot. We laughed at things that people wouldn't laugh at. By the time we were sophomores, everybody on campus knew us. They thought we were seniors. They thought we were there forever, an institution. And they come out and say, hey, Pete, Joe, how you doing? And Pete says, I can't remember their names. Well, he got something from his dad, George Henshaw. He called everybody pal or chief. He said, why don't we do what George is saying? So he said, Pete, Joe, how you doing? He'd say, hi, pal. Hi, chief. And then one time he says, what do we call him now, pal or chief? Call him the same thing. They won't know the difference. But we had so many good times, it's hard to even imagine him being gone, because he's not really gone. As long as we're alive, we're going to remember all the good things we did. And like I said, once in a lifetime. I tell my mom used to say, few people have some friends, but just a few have one great friend. And that's what Pete was. I mean, he told me when I first met Chris, he had had a heart attack back around 1991. And his mom called me from L.A. She says, Joe, Pete had a heart attack, so I'll be there. Got a plane, negotiated a price, and flew down. That's where I first met Chris. In fact, there was a picture, I think, when he's lying on the couch, and you're on the edge, and Mom Ruth had a table, and I'm sitting on a chair. I don't know who took that picture, but somebody had to take it. And so everywhere he went, I got to visit him, whether it's Columbus, Ohio, Louisville, Kentucky, down to Florida. In fact, Betsy drove with me when he moved down to Florida. But everywhere he went, I was gone. In fact, I think he must have moved about 21 times his first few years. And every time he'd call, he said, Joe, get the U-Haul ready. You know, we're moving. But you know what? You don't say no to a friend. A lot of people say, I've got great friends. But a true friend doesn't have to check and see whether he can do it or not. He's going to say, yes, I'll be there. Almost got me in trouble one time. I became a young principal at the age of 29. And I was hosting a governor and some people in our state. And Pete called me the day before. I need your help. I'll be there. So I told superintendent I can't be there. He says, but we got everybody coming. I said, I've got an assistant principal, do the job. He said, well, I don't know if your job will be here when you come back. I said, that's fine. I got to go take care of a friend. And I left because that was Pete Henshaw. Robert Wayne Henshaw. Saw Betsy born. I saw Peter born. You know, and there was not one time that went by. In fact, not too long ago, he said, Joe, I forgot how hard it is to raise a puppy. he said, and I think Matthew put something about the Renegade. Okay, Renegade was a German Shepherd that we found on campus. And Pete said, let's take him in. I said, Pete, we had an apartment. I said, Pete, how are we going to feed him? So there's a store down there, a butcher that we know we can probably get meat and bones for about 50 cents. But Renegade did not like females, okay? Anytime a girl came to our place, we had a little apartment by then, he would bark at him. I said, maybe he's not really a male dog. I said, maybe he's jealous. But I don't think you knew that Pete loved to read. About his sophomore, junior year, he took a philosophy course, and he started reading some big books, Anne Frank and Atlas Shrugged and everything else. And then he got into the philosophy, and he would read. In fact, we'd go on trips, he'd take a book, and he'd read. And he invited me to a class one time, and his philosophy professor said, you know, Descartes said that God is dead. And I looked at Pete, and Pete says, yeah, but we know that Descartes is dead. We don't know that God is dead. And you were right, he didn't go to church. I saw him 3 times that he had really tough times in college. One of the first time when his sister Carol died. We had met her, she got married, lived around the Ben Davis, Indianapolis area. said, Joe, can you come with me? I said, sure. He said, my sister died. I said, wow, he took it pretty tough. I didn't miss church. I always thought it was a good time, a good hour we could sit there and relax, not worry about, nowadays cell phones or anything. And Pete says, could I go to church with you? I said, sure. Sure, why not? And I was shocked. He never went to church. I got up every Sunday. But things that he did was we learned from each other how to have each other's back, how to trust it. But we laughed all the time. We laughed at people. We laughed at people. We laughed at ourselves. And, if I were to write a book, nobody would believe the things we did. They wouldn't. Because they would say, how could you guys do that? And Pete and I would laugh about it. And by the way, it was like his senior year, Betsy, when he had some problems and he wanted to quit school. And I came home one time and he was not there. He said, hey, where's Pete? He said, well, I saw him taking off. Really? So I tried to get home. He went down to Florida, left the college, went down to Florida. And we had a dean that was really tough. His name was Dean Truitt. And like I said, Pete and I did a lot of crazy things. There was a guy by the name, I think, Jim Ryan, that broke the mile record. And in that race, there was 2 guys behind him that came in second. And at the finish line, they grabbed hands and they tied together for the match. Well, Pete ran a little track, and he said, Joe, let's run in this intramural races, for representing our fraternities. I said, sure. So we were both going to run the half mile. So we started a pretty good clip. Pete had a few drinks the day before. So what happens around the first turn, he starts throwing up. I said, Pete, we got to go, come on. He said, no. So we took our time. And it was crowded, including this Dean Truitt that was the bad dean there at the university. And as we ended the finish, we came in holding hands, and the crowd went wild. They said, what are they holding hands? They're last place. I said, that's okay. We're friends. We deserved it, Another time, when he was really into photography, he came home, long hair, okay, had a little straw hat, had a little purse. I said, are you the right person? Got a little purse here? He says, yeah, and he had his camera. And we always wanted to go to the pits at the 500. Because of George Henshaw and Pete, we went for about 14 straight. In fact, Anton Holman used to hire me to cut his grass on weekends. Anyhow, he comes back from California, and he says, I got this pass. I'm a photographer. They let me through the gate. So you got to go through a tunnel at the 500. And there was a female security guard, and he's talking to her and talking to her. She said, sir, we can't let you in. We can't let you in. So a bunch of CBS guys come in with their cameras, and I got right in the middle. Went through the gate, and I said, ma'am, he's with us. She said, okay, go on through. So we got through. And it was great talking to Mario Andretti and Parnelli Jones and those guys. But we did things that people don't imagine. People knew us, and they couldn't break us up no matter what. Somebody say something, try to say, something bad about him. I said, hey, shut your mouth. That's my buddy Pete, and vice versa. We protected each other. We weren't afraid to confront people that said some things, and we're just there. And he was a shy guy. And I'm going to cut this short, but I'm going to tell you one story that maybe I shouldn't tell. Pete, don't get mad. We had a big shot putter, about 300-pounder, played football, big guy. And Pete did have big ears for a while, So anyhow, so Pete, we're working out the weights, getting ready for the wrestling season. This football player would make fun of him. And Pete said, that SOB's making fun of me. I said, Pete, we got to stand up to him. We really do. And so he kept making. So one day I looked at Pete. I said, Pete, it's time. So he went up to the guy and confronted him. The guy was about a foot taller, big 300-pounder. He said, listen, you SOB, I'm tired of all this. If you want to go, let's go here. Let's go outside. Of course, I was holding a barbell, to see if he was going to attack my buddy. And I don't know if he saw it. And I said, oh, Pete, I'm sorry. You felt that way. And he apologized to Pete. And Pete came back and he said, that was a close one, But you have each other's back. He's not gone, people. He's not gone. He's up there with probably Rob and some of the other people. His mom, Ruth, which was a jewel. She was a jewel. The Henshaw family took me in, and I had a key to get into their home. So when he was stationed at the Merchandise Mart for a while in Chicago, I gave him a key. Come on in and you want that little pool, and I'd come home sometime and he's in the pool just relaxing. But he, like I said, he had a great life, and I'm pretty sure he continues to have an afterlife that's pretty great. And it's a testimony to what he did, and the friends, and he talked about his new family, talked about his kids that he loved with his first wife. And I never heard him say anything bad about people. You know, we moved on what we did. And yeah, we would get angry, not at each other, at other people when we find out they were lying. And he would always say, you know what, they'll never believe what we did. So we did good things. And in his testimony here, you know, you could see what he was worth. And if you get a friend like that, and I'm not talking about your spouse, but if you get a friend like that, you'll be very blessed because they don't come around every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. It's wonderful. Next, I'd like to invite up Dan Bracey. Is Dan here? No? Oh, there we go.
Okay. Okay. Hi, I'm Dan Bracey. A few years ago, I started losing my sight, and the last couple of years, it's gotten pretty bad. And I hope that my wife walks kind of slow sometimes, so I hope that doesn't come off my 3 minutes. You know, I met Pete about probably over 15 years ago when we moved to Sun City, and I got together with a few friends, and we met with these people and with each other for at least once a week, probably for the last 15 years, and we got to know each other pretty well. When I started really losing my sight and I couldn't drive anymore, Pete said, I'll pick you up on Saturday morning and take you, we'll meet some friends and have breakfast. Or if we don't meet them, we'll just have breakfast. And God, what a treat when you can't get out like you're used to getting out. And, you know, Pete just volunteered and he was there. My wife asked me the other day if how I was feeling about Pete, and if I was sad and grieving and so on and so forth, like you're supposed to do. And I said, no, I haven't really been sad when I think about it. When I think about Pete now, I think about Pete smiling. And I think about us smiling whenever we were together or with a bunch of people that we knew. Pete was he just brought that smile and that joy of living. He really enjoyed living. And, you know, I'm not too used to people like that, being around people. So, because I don't like that many people. So, it's I really enjoyed it, and some of it rubbed off on me over the years. And, you know, I just had nothing but good thoughts about Pete. Somebody mentioned a puppy, and we got sister puppies about 15 months ago. And Pete, apparently, he has had dogs. He knew dogs. I hadn't had a dog in 60 years. And he should have told me, no, don't get a puppy. I'm not kidding you, after a month of having a puppy, and with their little puppy teeth and their little puppy claws and everything, both of us looked like a couple of heroin addicts with our arms were just in ribbons. It was, but he, he really loved that puppy. I mean, I was amazed, and some of it rubbed off on me. I love my puppy now. We were at breakfast one morning after he had picked me up, and I was looking at my breakfast, or what I could see of my breakfast, and trying to figure out what was what. And when you only have bacon and eggs, that's not too hard. But I heard him talking to somebody, and he said, it's just us. We didn't know anybody else there, and I heard him talking to somebody, and he said, "This is my puppy. You want to see my puppy?" And he had his phone out, and he had a picture of the puppy, and he was showing it, and it was like a 1-year-old kid. And that's what he needed. He just loved the puppy, and he loved talking to people, and he loved getting reactions from kids. It was just a real pleasure to be around. And it's one other thing that I remember. One time he and I had been with a group of friends, and somebody in there had been having marital problems and divorces and a divorce, and it was really having a tough time. And on the way home, Pete, we got to talking about our wives. And Pete said, "You know what, Dan?" He said, "We really got lucky, didn't we?" And nobody's ever said that to me before or since, but we did. We really got lucky. And, I figure I really got lucky knowing Pete, and I'm going to miss him. And he was a good, dear friend. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Okay, next we have Bob Bikuthis. Thank you.
Yeah. We have my first slide, please. There you go. Being a photographer, I can't do anything without having visual support. So, my name's Bob Bikoskis, and Pete was a close friend that I met through the photo club at Sun City, Lincoln Hills. He was a wonderful photographer and well-respected, well-liked member of the photo club. I'd like to take a few minutes to tell you just how special he was as a photographer and a friend. If you ask those who knew him, you would get a litany of attributes such as humble, kind, thoughtful, patient, knowledgeable, generous, and most of all, funny. There are those who will remember Pete for his humanity, and others will remember him for his wonderful award-winning Galaxy photographs. Those who went on Galaxy field trips with Pete will remember his enthusiasm and his willingness to share his knowledge. He taught fellow club members the techniques for taking Galaxy photos both during the detailed pre-trip planning sessions and while on location. And he was not one for hiding his secret shooting spots, but he would gladly share them with others. Pete was always ready to patiently answer questions and lend his support. It always used to amuse me just how much Pete wanted to get the foreground subjects just right. He would often bungle over slippery rocks in the cold, in low light, just to make a more interesting photo. Here he has the light from Mars reflecting in the water, lined up with the tent in the foreground. This is a photo of the galaxy descending over the Carson River. I must have driven past this location 30 times or more, and I never once realized that there was a great photo to be had here, but Pete did. The photo was shot where the Carson River slips under a small bridge on California 88. You cross that bridge in the blink of an eye, yet Pete somehow found the shot. And thanks to him, I have my own special galaxy photograph to enjoy. If I were to try and explain Pete's whimsical sense of humor, I would be hard-pressed to do so. This photo, done while attending Sierra College Photoshop class, might do the trick. Here he's developing his compositing skills by placing a cartoon bus on a trail. Take special note of the solar panel that's powering that Coleman gas lantern. Yet Pete had his serious side as well. Here he channels his inner man Ray and Salvador Dali to create a compelling image, one that speaks to the shackles that a misspent youth can place on his man. After hearing of all of his youthful adventures, I wonder whether there's some personal thought put into this image. The image includes a photo of the historic Fred C. Nell's School for Juvenile Offenders, and it won him an award at a recent Art League of Lincoln competition. Pete's welcoming personality and good humor made it easy for folks to feel open and comfortable with him. These attributes enabled him to get many wonderful, intimate portraits during his many travels. I should have had some hands up there. There you go. Pete was also an excellent landscape photographer, whether the location was Yosemite, Lake Tahoe, or the Eastern Sierras. Pete had a great eye for perfectly composing and capturing the scene. Pete was truly a very lucky man, for he was able to share many of his adventures with his wife, Chris, the love of his life and soulmate, who wholeheartedly supported him in all of his adventures, including photography and dance. I was fortunate enough to go shooting with Pete on many, many occasions, whether it was stumbling around in the dark, waiting for the moon to rise over Lake Tahoe, or standing in a cold morning in Lee Viney Canyon. This is how I'll remember him best. A knowing grin that simply says, I just can't believe how lucky we are to be doing this.
That was wonderfully put together. Thank you so much, Bob. Really appreciate it. Next, we have a tribute video that all of our family put together with help of the photo club, help of contributions from them, and then a bunch of work and time that Betsy, her family, and our family put together. So if we could play that now, that would be wonderful.
Come away with me in got my eggs and my pancakes too. You got me to serve everything but you. I break the yolks and make a smiley face. I kinda like it in my brand new place. I wipe the spots up over me. Don't leave the keys in the door. I never put towels on the floor anymore. 'Cause dreams last for so long. Even after you're gone, I know you love me, and soon you will see you were meant for me, and I was meant for you. I called my mom and she was out for a walk. We sold a cup of coffee, but it didn't want to talk, so I picked up the paper. It was more bad news, more hearts being broken, more people being used. Put on my coat in the pouring rain. I saw a movie, it just wasn't the same. 'Cause it was happy, oh, I was sad, and it made me miss you. Oh, so bad, 'cause dreams last for so long. Even after you're gone, I know you love me, and soon you will see you were meant for me, and I was meant for you. I go about my business, doing by my side. What would I say if I had you on the line? Same old story, not much to say. Hearts are broken every day. Brush my teeth, I put the cat back on, and I get hit when I leave the light on. I pick up a cup and turn the sheets down and take a deep breath. And a good look around, put on my PJs and hop into bed. I'm half alive, but I'm mostly dead. I try and tell myself it'll be alright. I shouldn't bring more tonight, 'cause dreams last for so long. Even after you're gone, I know you love me, and soon I know you will see you were meant for me, and I was meant for you. Yeah, you were meant for me, and I was meant for you.
A child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away, and he was talking before I knew it. And as he grew, he'd say, I'm gonna be like you, Dad. You know I'm gonna be like you. And the cats in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. You know we'll have a good time then.
All right. So yeah, thank you all for the assistance on putting that together. It was wonderful. So my brother Josh is going to share one little thing about a Storyworth project that he put together.
So some of you may have already seen this on your way in. There's a table right out here in the hallway that has some sheets of paper on it that you can take away. About a year ago, I started a project with Pete called Storyworth, which some of you may be familiar with, but it's basically a little project to try to document stories, experience, lessons, all kinds of stuff about Pete and his life for the family to then share, be able to have. To keep a little piece of him with us. Unfortunately, with his health, about halfway through the project, he was not able to continue working on it. So we have basically what will happen is we'll take all his stories that he wrote, and I'm asking all of you if you have any stories or experiences or even just favorite jokes of his, pictures. If you would be willing to share with those with us, we're actually going to combine them together, and it'll actually be published in a little book, hardbound, covered, professionally published book that all the family members or anyone who would like a copy of it may have. So there's some information sheets on the table out there. If you would like to take one, please do. There's actually a sample chapter of one of the ones that, one of the stories that Pete had written about his mother, Granny Red. So feel free to browse that too. But so thank you.
Yeah, so that's the table right outside this wall right here, which you'll see here in a second. So we have provided food for everybody because our goal, or what we'd like, is for everybody to stay and share and break bread together and share stories about Pete. And so what we did is we have a food caterer. Thank you. Having a hard time. Caterer. And what we're going to do, we're going to open up the back doors here, and we have basically a U-shaped setup in this hallway where you go out this door, you head towards the backside of the building. There'll be food there and refreshments on the way back, and you'll enter this door right here. So everybody will exit those two doors, grab some food if you'd like some food. And this is for everybody, not just family, for everybody that's here, because we want everybody to come back in. The reason we did circular tables instead of lined up tables is so we could all share and interact and remember Pete. So that's our goal here with the caterer and the food. So yeah, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. And we're going to open up the doors and move on to the sharing.